You're running barefoot across dry savanna grass at noon, chasing an animal that's faster than you, stronger than you, and better armed than you in every conceivable way. And somehow, hours later, it's lying exhausted on the ground and you're still standing. Your feet did that. Not shoes, not spears, not yet. Just skin, bone, and a design so specific it's still being studied by biomechanics labs today. This is the story of how the human foot became one of the most quietly sophisticated pieces of engineering evolution has ever produced, and why, for the vast majority of our history, we trusted it completely. No cushioning, no arch support, no rubber sole between us and the ground. Just bare feet doing exactly what they were built to do. Picture East Africa, roughly 2 million years ago. The forest is thinning into open grassland, and something in the human body is changing to match it, quietly, generation by generation. The feet get longer. The big toe stops being a grasping thumb, like a chimpanzee's, useful for climbing branches and gripping bark, and locks into place beside the others, forming a rigid lever built for exactly one purpose: covering distance, step after step, hour after hour, day after day. An arch rises through the middle of the foot, springing slightly with every stride, storing and releasing energy no ape's flat foot ever could. None of this happens by accident, and none of it happens quickly. Every one of these changes shows up gradually, over hundreds of thousands of years, because the individuals who happened to have them outlived and outran the individuals who didn't. Bit by bit, the foot stops being something built for climbing trees and becomes something built for crossing ground. And that single shift reshapes almost everything about how the rest of the body eventually moves, balances, and survives, from the knees all the way up to the spine. Start with the arch, because almost nobody thinks about it correctly. Most people assume the arch is there to support weight, the way a beam supports a bridge. It isn't. The arch is a spring. When your heel strikes the ground, the arch flattens slightly, storing energy the same way a bent bow stores energy before release. When your foot pushes off again, that stored energy returns and helps propel you forward, almost for free, without your muscles having to generate it from scratch. Daniel Lieberman, an evolutionary biologist at Harvard who has spent years studying barefoot runners in Kenya and South Africa, has found this spring mechanism recovers a genuinely significant portion of the energy that would otherwise be wasted with every single stride. A small percentage per step that compounds into an enormous difference across miles of open terrain, especially at the pace of a sustained hours-long chase. Shoes with rigid or heavily cushioned soles interfere with this. They don't remove the spring exactly, but they mute it because the foot no longer needs to work as hard to protect and adjust itself, so over time it simply stops working as hard, period. The small stabilizing muscles that would normally fine-tune each footfall relax and let the cushioning absorb the job instead. And like any muscle left unused, they gradually weaken, sometimes measurably, within just a few years of consistently cushioned footwear. Researchers comparing lifelong barefoot populations to lifelong shoe wearers have documented exactly this kind of measurable difference in foot strength and arch function. A gap that widens the earlier in life the cushioning starts. The complication is that the arch only performs at its best when the rest of the foot is left free to move with it, completely unrestricted, flexing and adjusting in real time, and for the overwhelming majority of human history, it always was. Now consider the sole itself, because this is where the story gets genuinely strange. The bottom of a bare human foot contains an extraordinary concentration of nerve endings, some of the densest sensory receptors found anywhere on the human body, comparable in density to the fingertips, reporting back, in real time, exactly what kind of surface you're standing on. Loose gravel, wet grass, a hidden root, a shifting, uneven slope. This isn't a minor detail tucked away in an anatomy textbook. It's a full-body balancing system feeding constant information up through the ankle, the knee, and the hip, adjusting posture and stride before you're even consciously aware that anything changed beneath you. Put a cushioned sole between the foot and the ground, and that signal gets dulled, not eliminated, but muted, like turning down the volume on a conversation you still desperately need to follow. Studies comparing habitually barefoot populations to habitually shod populations have found measurable differences in balance, proprioception, and how quickly the body corrects for uneven or unexpected terrain. Differences that show up even in simple laboratory balance tests. Some researchers have gone as far as describing the sole of the foot as a kind of external sensory organ in its own right, one that modern life has spent decades quietly muffling without most people ever noticing. Infants notably explore new surfaces with their bare feet the same instinctive way they explore new objects with their hands, gathering information before language even exists to describe what they're feeling long before anyone teaches them that this is even something worth paying attention to. Which means a shoe doesn't just change what your foot feels. It changes what your entire body knows, moment to moment, about exactly where it's standing and how urgently it needs to respond. Then there's the running itself, and this is where the anatomy stops looking like a coincidence and starts looking like a strategy. Humans are famously slow sprinters. Almost any four-legged animal on the savannah can outrun a human over a short distance without even trying particularly hard. But over long distances in open heat, humans have something almost nothing else on the plain has: the ability to run for hours while shedding heat efficiently through sweat, while most fast animals overheat quickly and are forced to stop and rest in shade. In 2004, Lieberman and biologist Dennis Bramble published research in the journal Nature, arguing that the human body carries a distinct evolutionary signature of this ability, and that persistence hunting, chasing an animal not to catch it in one sudden burst, but to keep it moving relentlessly mile after mile until it collapses from heat exhaustion, may have shaped the human skeleton as powerfully as any other single behavior in our history. Anthropologists who study modern persistence hunters, including groups in the Kalahari, have documented hunts lasting anywhere from 2 to 5 hours, conducted almost entirely on unshod feet, tracking a single animal across terrain that shifts constantly between sand, rock, and thorn. And the barefoot, with its shock-absorbing arch and its real-time surface feedback, was the interface that made all of it possible, stride after stride, mile after mile, without a single blister-inducing seam or unnatural pressure point getting in the way of the chase. Some researchers argue this specific combination of endurance and sensory precision may have been just as important to early human survival as any weapon, quietly shaping the course of human evolution long before anyone sharpened a spear point. It's a strange thing to sit with. For a significant stretch of our history, the most decisive advantage our species carried into the hunt wasn't a tool at all. It was a foot. But here's the problem with treating any of this as a simple story of natural perfection. If the barefoot is such a finely tuned instrument, engineered by 2 million years of relentless pressure, why did humans ever start covering it up at all? And why did that covering eventually become almost universal across nearly every human culture on Earth, in wildly different climates, with wildly different materials, arriving at roughly the same solution? The honest answer is that footwear wasn't a rejection of the foot's design. It was an expansion of its range. The earliest confirmed footwear, inferred indirectly from changes in toe bone structure roughly 40,000 years ago, appears not on the open savanna but in colder, rockier terrain, where the foot's natural advantages mattered far less than protection from frostbite and sharp, unforgiving stone. Shoes let humans go places bare feet genuinely could not survive, expanding the map of where our species could live, hunt, and eventually settle permanently. The trade-off is that modern footwear, especially the heavily cushioned kind, now shows up constantly in warm, flat, entirely everyday environments where almost none of that original survival justification still applies, and the sensory and mechanical costs quietly accumulate anyway, largely unnoticed by the people wearing them every single day. The foot didn't become obsolete the day the first shoe was made. It became optional. And optional, it turns out, is not remotely the same thing as unnecessary. The same sensory system that once read gravel and grass in real time is still down there, largely intact, still capable of doing its job, just rarely given the chance to prove it anymore. Most of what changed isn't the foot. It's the ground rules we quietly decided it had to follow. Every step you take today is still being negotiated by a piece of anatomy built to outrun animals across an open plain, whether or not you're wearing anything on it at all.